Good evening, and welcome to another episode of What's Your Story? Tonight, I have the great privilege of sitting down with our Board of the Library President, Connie Dykstra. Welcome to our show.
Thank you.
We're very happy to have you here with us.
Thank you.
We usually start our program by asking our guests where they grew up.
Well, that's an easy one. Great. Start with the softballs.
That's right.
I grew up in Ohio, outside of Cleveland, in Shaker Heights, and lived there all my adult life. And my father was a journalist with the Cleveland Press newspaper. Back in the day when there were two newspapers every day, so he was with the afternoon paper that is no longer a paper. They couldn't hold two papers. A lot of towns couldn't do that. But so I grew up in kind of a newspaper family, which was fun. It still makes me love real hard paper newspapers.
That answers a lot for me about you. Yeah, because you're a very detective, inquisitive, want to know kind of person. So I like that about you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes,
Right.
yes. So did you attend school, college in that?
In Ohio. I went to Denison University in Granville, Ohio, and have since found out that two other members of our board are alums of Denison University, which was like small world.
It
thing.
really
It's
is.
just, really not.
That happens a lot here at the
Yeah.
Graves Library.
Yeah.
A lot of people have connections, and I think there's something about this place that,
Exactly.
Because what are the chances of that? And they're currently on the board.
Right. And we didn't know each other necessarily, but so, yeah, that was fun. I was at Denison for 3 years. 1 year I did a full junior year abroad in England at the University of Durham, which was fabulous.
Oh, wow.
So that got a chance for a lot of travel at that time as a student, which was fun.
Yeah.
But that's...
And then after school, did you start a family right away?
Gosh.
Did you work both?
No, right away after school was really my start with the love of state of Maine, because I went the summer of '76. A lot of my friends in college had worked in the summer in Bar Harbor, and they said, "Oh, come, there's tons of jobs, and you could just kind of show up in a town then and get a job," and it all sort of seemed, so we thought it just seemed to work out. So I went with a bunch of friends up to Bar Harbor, and I worked that summer at the Astaku Inn in Northeast Harbor, which is sort of one of those big
Still
old...
there?
It's still there.
Wow.
Grand Dam hotels. And it was such a fabulous introduction to Maine, because I only had to work in the morning when the switchboard and people were checking in. It was the old, again, 76, so we're talking switchboard, like I plugged in people's rooms. And then,
how fun.
Yeah, and then in the afternoon, they were like, come back at 4, and like, whatever you do in between, and they had housing for everybody. So I was, sailing and lots of hiking all through Acadia, and, it was fabulous. And that was still the time in the 70s. The people, like all of the old... dowagers of that era, Mrs. Vanderbilt, Mrs. Astor, Mrs. Mellon they lived at the hotel all summer. So they would come from Manhattan and with their trunks and whatever, and have all 3 meals there. And so they would, and like Mrs. Astor would call Mrs. Vanderbilt every morning. They'd do the crossword puzzle.
How interesting.
I kept a journal, because everybody that came through the lobby was somebody who had been in. People would say to me, "Oh, he was Secretary of the Treasury under FDR," or whatever. Like, oh my gosh, there was just all of these people coming and going, and it was really a fun place all around. But I also just said, "Oh my gosh, this is the most beautiful place on earth I've ever seen."
I've never been up there.
Oh my gosh, it's fabulous.
I've been to Bar Harbor,
Yeah.
but never.
To get around to like Northeast Harbor,
Yep.
where this is,
Yeah.
No, just what's
Put
wonderful.
that on my list.
Yep, definitely.
So meeting people like that, did that get you interested in politics or?
Well, at the time, I was interested in broadcast journalism.
Okay.
So my goal was to unseat Barbara Walters. That's what I used to tell people. Just a very small, a modest goal. I had worked as an intern news reporter at the ABC station in Cleveland. And then the first job that I took, not too long after that, I went out to Hawaii and I worked at the CBS station out there.
Wow.
So I was always really interested in it. But it's the kind of thing where you have to be willing to really start small and stay at a station somewhere for a long time.
Yeah.
And I found that I, believe it or not, didn't love living in Hawaii. It's not that I didn't love it. It was just very far away. It was far from my family. It was too far, for my mother to be able to come and visit.
Right.
And you have to really, it's almost like living abroad. It's just
Right.
a completely different world. And I really wanted to get back, but as luck had it, and this was where I went into politics, the congressman from Honolulu owned the television station.
Oh.
So folks there said, well, if you're thinking of going back to Washington, and back to the States, why don't you, maybe he can have a job for you. We'll tell him that you're coming.
Yeah.
Because I had been in Washington before that, right after college and after being up in Northeast Harbor, I went down and worked in D.C. for Ralph Nader, actually.
Wow.
So that sort of did get me started in some of that area. But anyway, I went back and worked for the congressman for a year from Hawaii. Excuse me. And then the young congressman who was just coming in, he was 30 from my area of Northeast Ohio, Shaker Heights, over to the border, was running for his first term, and I switched when he came to work for him, and I worked for him for almost 10 years.
Wow.
So, I always said to people, the trips to the district, people be like, well, Cleveland or Honolulu? It's a toss-up. But my mother was thrilled because I got home a lot.
That's great. That's great. Now, were you married at the time when that was happening? Was this before you got married? Or?
I met John when I was in Washington.
Okay.
And when I worked for the congressman from Hawaii, there was a woman in our office who was married to John's boss. And he was with a consulting firm outside of D.C.
Yeah.
And so John was kind of the bachelor friend that would come over and take care of the kids on the weekend if they traveled, or he'd feed their dog. And so she claims that she was walking in front of the Supreme Court one day and said, "John and Connie, I have to introduce them."
I love hearing stories like that.
And so we thank her all the time.
Yeah, that's
when our kids were little, we had them hold a sign for her that said, "Thank you, Barbara."
Oh.
We wouldn't be here without you.
So speaking of kids, how many?
We have a son and a daughter.
Yeah.
Peter lives in New Hampshire, and our daughter Kate is down in South Carolina.
Do you get to see them often?
We do. We're going this weekend to New Hampshire.
Yeah.
We get over there easily. They're in Bow, so it's about an hour and a half drive. And I just came back from visiting our daughter in South Carolina. It's right by Hilton Head, so it's also a lovely place.
Not tough.
Yeah,
not
although
tough
with
to
the
visit.
pandemic, it was hard.
I was just going to say that. It must have been really difficult to, technology is wonderful, but it's,
Sure.
When you can't hug your kids
Yeah.
or your grandkids.
Right.
That must have been
That's
must
hard.
Have been
yeah, and we
hard.
have 5 granddaughters. So our son has 3 little girls, and Kate has 2 little girls. In fact, today is Juliet's birthday. She's 4, and our son has a little girl, Hannah, who turns 4 tomorrow.
Oh.
So we call them twin cousins.
Oh, yeah.
Because they were born 23 hours apart.
Yeah,
so
oh my gosh.
I know, which is just really fun.
That's great.
So
now there's something special that you do with them that we just found out about a couple of months ago. You have a love for fairies, fairy houses.
Yes.
And so you've sort of turned them on to that, right? To be, participating in.
I have.
Yeah.
Which is just fun to see, because you don't know what's, you don't want to impose your interests or whatever on kids, and if they're not interested. No, my love of fairies goes back to my love of Peter Pan, which is probably when I was in first grade, I was Peter Pan, and I had a little outfit that my mother made me with the green hat and the whole thing, and the tights, and I would fly around the house, tell everybody I could fly. My brothers were like, "Oh, can you do something with Connie? She's flying around the house again with our friends are here." It was very embarrassing. And in first grade, I went and told my teacher, "You need to call me Peter, because that's my name." And she was just freaked out. She called my mother and said, "What should we do?" And my mother said, "Well, call her Peter."
Yeah.
She said, "She'll grow out of it.
She'll get
trust
over
me.
that.
She's not gonna want to do that for long." And Tinkerbell. So I was very into Tinkerbell. Yeah. And then I've just always I just sort of half believe in fairies.
Wow.
So, and I think there's a lovely magic to it. And so particularly the New Hampshire girls, they've really, they've been building fairy houses, and we go to fairy house festivals, and It's a lot. It's just fun because it also involves nature.
Right.
So they loved, and I love taking all the sticks and the twigs and leaves, and then you can turn them into all kinds of things. And that imaginative, creative play is just, I think, so important for kids.
Yeah. We just had a family here this morning, and now that, people are coming back into the library and spending more time. Yeah. So we have a young mom, and she has a set of twins, and they were playing with our Legos. And so you can hear even something like that where it's not quite nature.
Right.
But, even, some of the things that they're talking about, what they're going to make. And I love being the fly on the wall and listening to that, those conversations.
Right, right.
And I think that's just a nice thing for, your grandchildren are going to have that memory forever,
Yeah,
and
I hope.
Yeah,
that's nice.
And they go to school. Their interests are sports, anything like that, or
they're starting to get involved in sports.
Yeah.
We have a singer in the family, so I think a buddy. You're always trying to figure who knows what anybody's going to be. But we have our granddaughter Allie in South Carolina. Loves to sing and loves musicals.
That's
and
wonderful.
I mean, as a 6-year-old, her favorite was Phantom of the Opera. I mean, who's doing that at 6? You can't find a lot of friends. I mean, everybody else is singing "Let It Go," and she's like doing the aria from.
Yeah, good for her.
So she's just very captivated by singing and music, and very dramatic, as her mother was. My daughter was involved in theater a lot, so that's fun to see. Yeah.
So after Washington, did you come here?
Not yet, although, when I met John, because I had been so in love with Maine through my time up in Maine, and I met him, and he said, "Oh, my parents have a house in Kennebunkport, Maine," and I was like, "Oh, okay,
done.
This better work out, because that's I think I'll keep you just for that." And in fact, the first summer after we started dating, we came in August and to his family's house at Goose Rocks Beach, and I just was like, "What's not to like?"
I know. That is I think got to be one of my most favorite beaches.
Yeah.
And I sometimes in the off season just to go there because I don't have a parking permit.
Right.
But just to walk that beach, it is so picturesque and ever changing, but yet not.
Exactly. And when you tell people there's a 3-mile almost stretch of white sand beach on the southern coast of Maine, nobody believes you. I mean, it's so special.
It is. And when you go to, if you're going to like a tropical island or a place that, you would think the beaches would be miles and miles.
Right.
A lot of them, they're just cut up.
Sure.
So you don't have that, I live on a stretch that's 7 miles. There's a brook that runs through, so it's a little bit chopped up. But I could go from, Camp Ellis in Saco to Pine Point in Scarborough.
Yeah.
And I've tried to do that a few times, but it's always about the tide.
Yeah, exactly.
But where you are, when you're out there, same thing. Like you can walk out to, is it Timber Island?
To Timber Island. Yep, at low tide.
Have you ever stayed out there?
No, John has. John has stayed on a lot of the islands because he grew up summers there always, and so they would go and camp on Cape Island and Stage and a lot of the that's
because I would think that'd be fun to do.
Yeah, it would be.
So you back and forth here, and then
we came here summers always to visit his folks. So we met in Washington. Then we had a sort of an 8-year stint in Huntsville, Alabama, of all places. John went down there for a job, and I ended up did a number of things. The kids were little, so I freelance, did some freelance writing for a magazine, and then I freelanced for the newspaper. So that was great. And then we went again for a job change of his to Denver for 2 years, which was fabulous. But we kept realizing we really felt better on the East Coast, family here, and it just was more what we were used to. But Denver was lovely. And there I worked for the American Humane Association in their child support division, the child welfare division. They do dogs and kitties, but they also do children's issues.
I did not know that.
And that introduced me to sort of issues around child neglect and child welfare. And when we came back to the D.C. area, John went back to the company he had been working for, actually, after those changes, and they had a great position for him to come back. I started working in Baltimore, where I was the longest, for about 17 years, with the Annie Casey Foundation, which is a family serving, particularly in child welfare issues, foundation.
Yeah.
Which was a great place to be.
Fundraising or more of?
It was an endowed foundation.
Okay.
So it's the legacy of Jim Casey. He named it for his mother, Annie E. Casey. And he founded a little operation called United Parcel Service.
That's right.
Yes. The story is in 1917, his father died. His mother had 5 children. They lived in Seattle, very poor. For a time, they were in foster care. And to make ends meet, he started delivering packages on the back of his bicycle. And he said, I'm going to, start charging people for this. And his brothers said, you're crazy. You can't make money delivering packages. And
oh my gosh.
He became UPS.
I'm going to change the world.
I know. And he had, to his credit, he didn't have family of his own, but he always had a soft spot for how difficult it was for children in the foster system, because they didn't have the network. They didn't have the family that said, oh, Uncle Bob could give you a job or whatever. So he made a great effort at UPS to hire children, young adults who would come up through the system, and then created this foundation that in the early days, and it still is, did a lot of reform, a lot of system reform. So it's the kind of foundation that does multi-year major system reform initiatives.
Are you still affiliated with the Annie E. Casey Foundation, or?
I'm not. I still did some consulting for them after I left for a while, a little bit still while we came here, but not anymore. But I was in their communications group, which was a great place to be. I learned so much from all the people I worked with, because it was just a wonderful. We didn't have to worry about, are we going to make payroll this month? Unlike some of the other nonprofits I had been with, or, that kind of worry.
Right.
And we were just very, as they said, we have the privilege of making mistakes if we need to, but that's how you learn what works, and sharing that knowledge with communities of how to improve, particularly lives for disadvantaged families.
So what would be a typical day for you? You go into an office and meet with
when I was there, right? I managed publications for the foundation, and so I had a team of graphic designers. Some people worked remotely. We put out a number of publications, and so I also interfaced with the printers. So lots of deadline work. Everything was, oh my gosh.
No wonder you're so good at that here at the Graves Library.
Oh my gosh.
We'll get to that.
Everything was always due, or it needed to be in print in time to have 20,000 copies delivered for some big conference or an event. And so it was just, and we put out a big, and they still do. I always urge people to go look for this online at the Casey Foundation website. We put out every year something called the Kids Count Data Book. And it's data on child well-being in all 50 states, and now it's digital as well, so you can create graphs and do all sorts of things. And it does ranking, so you may have often heard about it in the news. It was Mississippi, we ranked so-and-so, or Maine proudly is always in the top 10 for doing really well on various indicators of child well-being. But that was quite a large paper-bound book, and we would print hundreds of thousands of copies and put it out every year. So that was a project that took months. And there was always an essay in the beginning by our president. And it just was, there's still online a lot of data down to the county level of being able to compare how children are doing on various levels of economics. You could say, how are we doing compared to New Hampshire? And where... And so it's used a lot
really
in legislation and just keeping things data-driven.
Right.
Yeah.
So one of our other guests that we have had on and is affiliated with the library, Billy Shore, who is the founder and CEO of Share Our Strength, No Kid Hungry. Did you ever know about each other back?
I didn't know him personally,
Yeah.
although he and I since have discovered he works on it with another organization, and on the board of that is the former president of the Annie Casey Foundation.
Okay.
So he just sent me a
Yeah.
note about it, and we said, "Oh, we'll have to get together."
That's interesting.
But we would have big annual conferences of philanthropies, and so a lot of the philanthropies work together as well, and we'll team up on things. And of course, they work so much with hunger, which is fabulous.
Yeah.
Not a fabulous issue. It's just that
Right.
they do fabulous work.
Well, and that's the thing, like with UPS and some of these companies that can actually turn things around, and I mean for the greater good, and all the people that benefit from that generosity.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
amazing.
Exactly.
So when did you retire or move to? You haven't really retired because you keep.
Well,
you're doing a lot of things for a lot of people.
Right, I have retired.
But as far as moving up here permanently to Kennebunkport.
Yeah, finally. There's always we kept saying every summer we were here, like so many people, we said some year we're going to come here and not have to leave again. And because John's folks were here, we would come for Prelude, we'd come for Thanksgiving. We came a lot of times in between, which was great. So we also got more of a taste of the town off season.
Yeah.
But finally in 2016. So it was when we came. A lot of people may know Kai Leffler, who is a realtor in town, and she sold my in-laws' house and knows the family really well. And for years and years, every summer, I would say, Kai, there's a house in the port I want to see. It's on the market. Kai, there's a house. And I said, we're not ready to buy yet. I just want to know.
You need to have those connections,
right?
Though.
And do we want an antique house? Do we want this? Do we want that? What's available? And she'd say, it's fine. I know when you're ready.
Yeah.
And we actually we're in Foxbury Woods. When we saw our unit, we saw it first in like 2007. It was on the market, and we loved it. And we said, but we're not ready. Yeah. And then after that, everything else I saw, I said, it's great, but it's not as nice as that unit in Foxbury.
Those are beautiful.
The fall of 2015, and what I liked about it is it has a whole built-in wall of bookcases in the living room, and I said, I want that house, because where do you put all your books?
That's your place.
And it was back on the market, and we grabbed it. She said, if you want it, don't even wait to come back up. They're going to go fast. So boom, that was it.
So some people, when they move to a community like this, and I'm going to retire, I'm going to enjoy the beach, I'm going to, go for walks and, get a library card. Both of you have done so much more so you really immersed yourself in getting into different community groups and helped us here at the library. What other organizations have you been part of?
Oh, great! It's funny. It's how that happens, because we sort of assumed we would come and just
walk the beach.
You don't know what you're going to do till you retire, right? And I joined. I was very interested in getting onto Ancestry.
Yes.
And doing all of that. But if you've ever done that, you have to really focus a lot of time.
Yeah.
Like I can't sit down for an hour, immerse myself, because it is like research, and then
really
come back 2 weeks later and I've already forgotten who somebody is that I was looking at. So I still have my subscription to that, but I haven't looked at it for over a year. We're both on the board at Atlantic Hall, because that's just fun, and we just love Cape Porpoise, and so we help with the rentals and the events and the pancake breakfast and that sort of thing. John's very involved with the Conservation Trust, which is great. When I got here in 2016, because I've always still been involved and interested in politics, even just from my time working on the Hill, I started working on the presidential campaign and just volunteering, and I thought, well, that's a good way to get to know people in town and go door to door and whatever. And then the 2016 election didn't go exactly the way I had expected it would. And I found myself just saying, oh my gosh, this is not how I plan to spend my time, but I'm really worried about this. And so I got involved
Good for you.
in other local campaigns and sort of the governor's race and helping some of our local state House and Senate candidates get elected, because I think it's also, I felt like, well, I can control what happens locally. Not control it. But I have more influence over what happens locally than trying to make a mark on a presidential or even a Senate race.
But I bet people are really appreciative of your your expertise and, sort of coming up through, and they can call on you for advice. And
Yeah, it's been fun. I'm
Yeah.
the communications chair for the local Democrats Club, so I put out our newsletter. I write and do the newsletter and do a lot of writing, because a lot of my background has always involved writing in all of these different jobs. So, and because when I worked for the congressman, I did a lot of writing, and I ended up as his press secretary. So I could spend a lot of, that kind of time I can kind of transfer to lots of other places, that kind of work.
So getting back to that diary that you talked, or your journal, I shouldn't say diary, journal that you talked about up in Bar Harbor.
Yeah.
Thinking about putting something out there, or?
It's funny. Nothing else from my journal would I ever put out there, I can tell you that, because I also kept one all through college, and that's going under lock and key. I thought, oh my gosh, I don't know what that's. Some people have to think about those, because it's just the musings of the 19-year-old are not something everybody needs to later see in your family. But the journal that I kept, and I went back and found it recently from just that summer when I was at the Astaku. I've thought about writing an article and submitting it to Down East or to some other places, and they have places that have articles of just my Maine or memories of Maine, because it really was just an interesting, and there were some interesting characters that came through that I've looked up and done some research on who they were, just to realize their stories, and kind of an era of privilege, not that it doesn't exist still, but particularly with being able to just live in that hotel all summer. It was like something out of Downton Abbey. The Gilded Age, I guess, of America, in that sense.
It would be fun to, if you were thinking about something fiction to, as you have been doing Ancestry, to, I didn't know I was related to.
Yeah.
So that could be one of your characters.
That could. I like it. That would be fun.
So you joined our library board. Thank you very much. By the way, a few years ago. Is there anything that you have, from your experience? I mean, you've helped us with so many events and writings of things. Is there anything that you, as far as looking down the road in the next few years, what you would like the library to be doing, or do you have any visions of your own for us?
Yeah.
I always like to ask people, because I don't want to be sort of stuck in it's very easy for me to come in here and do the day-to-day.
Right.
And I really try to have a vision, but a lot of times I look towards our board for things like that.
Right.
So.
Right. Oh gosh, there's already so much that you're doing, which is fabulous. So as a communications person, I think part of it is wanting to look for ways to make sure more people know what's available here, and that's always the trouble when you're in it. You're too busy to then figure out how to open up more access for people, or just make people aware, and have them think library when they're trying to think of places where they could go sit quietly, or they need a notary, or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And so some of that we've talked about, because of some of my backgrounds also in writing for the web is sort of looking at more ways we can use online resources to tell people what's here, and get I love the Music in the Garden series, so I think, and we've talked about getting some more opportunity for people to do that, just because of also where we're situated. There's so much people circulating around through this area, and to get them to, whether they stopped in and we on Thursday afternoons had a tea house, or something that other reasons to come, and then they realize what other fabulous resources are here.
So I think we've talked a little bit about the website and, things improving, because as you just said, when you're in it, it's really, and I've been here a really long time. And so I just sort of assume, and I never should do that.
Right. We know how that goes, right?
So, but I think it's, it's really important, and especially the way things that are moving, on that electronic level of making sure that people do get connected, stay connected, and what our offerings are, and things like that. So.
I thought of it just the other day, where I knew this, but hadn't really made the connection that, of course, on our site, you can connect into the newspapers. We have digital
Right.
subscriptions
We
for
do.
the Portland Press and the Boston and the New York Times and other papers. And often when I will send an article to a friend or refer it to them in general just about something, and they'll say, "Oh, I couldn't open it because of the firewall on that newspaper." So I'll go and copy it all out carefully and create something. And what I need to just say to people, here's a link to the library. You can use their subscription and pull down these articles. And yeah.
The digital library, it used to be called Marvel, which was the main virtual electronic resources. The name changed to the digital library, and on that link, which is on our website, and every resident in the state of Maine has the opportunity to get articles online, full text articles online, look at newspapers, book reviews.
Right.
They can get to Value Line if they're into investments. There's medical databases, and these are things that are not on the web.
Right.
So they're peer and professionally reviewed. They cull it out, put it on this. And because Maine has such a small population, we all, throughout the state, all residents have free access. So
Fabulous.
Years ago, when I used to teach a class at Adult Ed in Kennebunk, and the resources that you would be spending, this was probably like 12 years ago. Your budget would have had to be like $750,000 for the access to this material. I'm sure it's like gone way up. And the way they check it is your IP address. So if you're logging into a computer, you get an account, and they don't bombard you with, there's no ads. I mean,
it's pure research and information.
Yeah. So when I was going to Simmons College for my library degree, instead of like having to travel down there on the weekends, I could use the digital library for a lot of my research.
Right.
And so from an obituary that you want to get from Los Angeles to looking up a recipe or something in Consumer Reports or so
because so many of those now have firewalls or paywalls which is how they make money digitally, because they're not making money in their paper copies anymore.
Right.
But what a fabulous resource.
Yeah. So we need your help to get the word out.
Hello, everybody. Your fellow library has everything you need. Everything you need.
That's right.
And more.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think of other library things that we are talking a little bit about our long-term goals.
Right.
And the physical space, but a lot of it is having to do with making sure that we can get beyond these walls and get out to the masses.
Right. And I like the way already we're a community resource for so much more. It doesn't have to be about books or what people think of for a traditional library. We have movie night. Once we can clear, still our concern over the pandemic soon. So, and that kind of thing, we're a local community center, basically. I kind of think of it that way. That happens to have books in it.
That's right. I know there were a few, probably sometime, it's probably been a couple of years. There was a meeting going on, and I think either your husband was here for a meeting or something, or you were waiting for somebody, and I happened to be working in the other room.
Yeah.
And so I said, would you like to sit by the fire? And, it was just
I was thrilled.
So, but to be able to do that for folks, it's a really nice,
Sure.
The living room.
It is. It should be Kennebunkport's living room. People can think of it that way. Even if you just want to get out of your own house for a while.
Yeah.
And I know we've been a warming station on power outages, all kinds of things. I mean, that's just fabulous.
So now your granddaughters get to come here.
That when they come, we've gone up to the children's room and we've gone down to the book sale. Because of course it's just pick anything out, and they think that's so much fun that they get to keep it.
Yep.
But I'd like to be able to bring them more
Yeah.
And then we're going to have the 3 New Hampshire girls with us for a whole week in June.
Oh.
My son and his wife are going to finally get on a vacation. They've never taken one since the girls were born. So
That's great.
Yeah,
Do they
will.
like to sail at all?
I've heard the sailing camp is. I've been looking for camps to
Yeah.
put them in for that week. So yeah.
Between that and going out on like the Eleanor or the Pineapple
Right.
Catch or something
right.
like that.
Yeah.
That's something I would never think to do unless, folks were in town.
Right. And the
But-
whale watch, all of that. The whale
Yeah.
watch. Yeah. Good
I think I'd get a little...
That's you don't want to find out too halfway into that's not for them.
That's
so.
right.
Yeah.
For all parties
right,
involved.
Right. Wouldn't bother me, but yeah.
So I confessed this to Connie one time. We were outside. We had an outdoor book sale. And ever since I've met Connie, I said to her, if I ever look at you and I have a tear in my eye, it's because you look so much like my mom. And it really does, in such a good way.
Yeah,
so every time I
yeah.
talk with you, I feel like I'm sitting down right now with, you're much younger,
Right,
but, it's
right.
just, it really warms my heart.
Yeah,
and
that's
we
so
were on a
nice, so
one of
sweet.
our wine Zooms.
Yeah.
One night, and one of my nephews was he logged in from New Jersey, and he sent me a side note, and he said, "What's Graham doing
Oh my gosh.
on the Zoom?" And I thought, see, it's not just
it's not just
me.
you.
So
Because sometimes you see something in people that no one else sees. But
no,
yeah.
everyone in my family has commented, and I
Oh,
said, and you know
funny.
what? She's just as nice as Mom.
Oh, that's so nice.
So
That's
anyway,
sweet.
we usually end our session with a rapid fire couple of questions.
Okay.
You up for that?
Sure.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you just a few things. Sometimes you might have multiple answers. That's okay. So what would be, if you had to say, your favorite ice cream flavor?
Oh my gosh. I'm embarrassed. I'm not a huge ice cream
Oh, okay.
fan, believe it or not. I mean, I am. It's not something I like sort of like a chocolate caramel swirl.
Oh,
Say for not like an ice cream,
lovely.
I'm going right for the most fattening ones.
That's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. Favorite movie?
I was a film minor in college, English lit and film minor. So, but that's a.
So you probably have.
Oh, you know what
many.
though? Yeah, no, the original Wuthering Heights with Laurence Olivier. Oh my gosh, and it's hard to find. It's.
That would be a good movie night movie.
It would be a fabulous movie night movie.
We might have to put that on our list.
Yeah, along with a lot of other movies. But I mean, as
That's
far as
right.
favorite, it's hard to pick a favorite movie.
That's
but.
right. Favorite restaurant? It doesn't have to be local.
Well, our new favorite one locally is Chez Rosa, which we've really come to enjoy, and we like all of the ones in town.
Yeah.
I'm a big foodie, everything. Every time we travel, for me, it's all about. I've already figured out all the restaurants I want to go to.
Yeah.
I had one of the best meals I've ever had in Maine at Primo in Rockland. I'd love to get back there. We just with the COVID again, we haven't been able to.
Yeah.
But that's on our list.
Well, let's hope
I've
we
tried
do.
every year to get into Lost Kitchen and haven't been able to do it. So.
I know. Is that coming up? Where you put your
for the postcard? It's like April, I think. That's
Okay.
right. If they do it postcards again,
I've got to try that
yeah,
this year.
Yeah.
Because I've seen pictures of friends that have been, and
Yeah.
everything looks.
I
so
know. I'm afraid
amazing.
it'll go out of business or something before I get there.
I know. I know. What is the coolest place you've ever been?
Oh, wow. Well, it wasn't Hawaii. That was 85 degrees every day. Coolest place I've ever been. That's that I've been fortunate to have done some fun travel. So much. For whatever reason, this one just popped into my head. The Himeji Castle in, I think it was in Kyoto, in Japan. It's in Japan. It just was. I just remember it was just a fascinating tour and so different. I've been through all the castles in England and whatever. Not all of them. That would take forever, but I tend to use hyperbole. But that was really interesting.
Yeah, I bet. What about your favorite cocktail? Do you have a favorite cocktail?
I do now, which is funny because it was my parents' favorite cocktail, which is a Manhattan. And I used to eat the cherries out of them when I was a kid and then make the face like, ooh, how do you drink this? And then until we came here, really, I was not a cocktail person. I'm just kind of a wine drinker, or maybe something like a gimlet or gin tonic. But we started making Manhattans, and now I'm like, hey, my parents were onto something. I really enjoy these.
And the whole sipping part and taking that time and, maybe putting some
particularly
music
in the winter,
on,
they have some weight to them. In the summer, maybe if I have something again, I'll have a gin and tonic or whatever.
Yeah.
But they're like a by the fire kind of cocktail.
We've talked a little bit about vermouth, I think,
Yes.
before. So you're a big fan of, right? Are you and John
Well,
big
John's
fans?
the mixologist.
Okay.
But we discovered sort of what a concept after we had just been getting whatever you get at the grocery store, that like, oh, there's different kinds of vermouth. Who knew? So, there's a group in Portland that makes vermouths, and they have 2 different kinds. And the name of the company, I think, is Drink Maine, or it's something like that. And for a while during the pandemic, they were delivering to the door.
Wow.
Not that we went through a lot of vermouth, but it just was because I wanted to keep them in business. So we got several bottles and we shared them with friends. They have a vermouth that they make, and the root of it is, I want to say it was rhubarb, which is really unusual. But they just have all kinds of barks and rhubarb, and it's a little sipping drink on its own.
I know. I think these days the people who are into mixology and shrubs and all of those kinds of, it's just so much fun.
It is. We've gone to a couple cocktail making classes just for all of for most of it you'd have to have all that stuff at home. So we just go back to kind of the basics.
And I think it's something that brings people together. So it's sort of like taking a cooking class or something like that.
Right.
And the different glasses and
right.
That's all part of it, which is which is right up my alley.
Yeah. No, me too. And it's very popular now, as you know. So there was a whole period where none of us were drinking cocktails like our parents had. That was sort of their generation.
That's
and now it's so back in.
It really is.
It's just come right around.
Yeah, it really is. Do you and John have any trips planned coming up?
We've, like everybody, we've postponed everything for other than just to see family. 2 bucket list trips that we have. We'd like to get to Iceland, John particularly for all the geothermal, and we had hoped to try to get to Australia or New Zealand. We've traveled some with Road Scholar, which we really enjoyed just because we like that mix of getting sort of lectures and walking tours and then time on your own. We learned so much more that way.
Yeah.
And we were just about to plan a trip in the spring of 20, so to try to go to New Zealand, which somehow you got to plan a lot of time for that. That's not a 1 week trip.
Right, but that one's it's more doable than going, right? That's what I hear, like instead of Australia.
I think so. We probably can't do both. To do both would take a month. But and I don't want to just hopscotch around.
Right.
If we're going to do it, we'd like to spend some time there. So maybe, hopefully.
I hope you get to.
We will.
So.
I think we might.
And you'll have to, experience, some of the cocktail making there. You might come back with a new one for us all to try.
With kiwi in it.
That's right.
A kiwi twist.
Thank you so much for being on our show today, or
You're
tonight,
so welcome.
I should say. And thanks for being part of our board and all the help that you bring to us.
Privilege.
Wow.
I just love this library.
And, congratulations on becoming our new board president this year.
Thank you.
So I look forward to many fun projects with you. So
I'm looking forward to it. There's no shortage of fun things
That's
we can
right.
do here.
That's exactly right. So, and thank you all for joining us for another episode of What's Your Story? And hopefully we will see you next time right here.